Happy Easter, everyone. My name is Eric, the Investigative Millennial, and we're going to be doing a short second video today on the resurrection. Because what else are you going to talk about on Easter? Now, in my former videos, I've talked about lots of different things and lots of different factors. I've even talked about more recently about how the apostles wouldn't have any incentive to make any of this up, given the fact that they were going to be killed, socially shamed, and not making any money for it and not gaining power or anything else that's typically related with why people make things up. Well, I would say we could conclude that they are reliable, but there's another additional factor that has to be considered. And that is, how did the apostles get anybody to believe what they were saying? Now, the reason why this would be incredibly problematic is because Jesus was crucified. Now, a crucified Messiah was an oxymoron. It's like a married bachelor or a square circle or some other contradiction. Crucifixion was not only a humiliating and brutal death, but it was so shameful and there was a lot of stigma behind it. Basically, anybody who was thought to have been a crucified victim was lowered in stature. And that's not really something we can identify as Westerners because we don't live in a honor-shame culture. But honor and shame are held in very high regard in said societies. The criminals who were crucified on the cross, and obviously Jesus wasn't really a criminal, but the point is that this would not have been a thing that would have been made up or been favorable. So not only would Jesus' followers have dispersed if the resurrection didn't really happen, which is what happened to pretty much all the other failed messiahs both before and after Jesus, but we have to question something as to why exactly they would have believed that Jesus was resurrected. Well, my solution is pretty easy. We know that thousands of people converted to Christianity in the first century alone. And there's a source from Rodney Stark, The Rise of Christianity, that documents how big it was, apparently. It spread in many different regions of the Roman Empire. Now, the book of Acts tells us in pretty much all of the conversions, there was either miracles or in the Jewish synagogues, there was an appeal to prophecies and fulfilled prophecies. But at the same time, with regards to Gentiles, which were still the majority of the converts even then, and it was a lot of people who were converting because of the miracles, which not only demonstrated that Jesus was alive and had power over circumstances, it would have also basically bypassed many of the prejudices that people would have had against him. Prejudice, especially from Gentiles to Jewish people, was very alive at the time. They regarded them as people who thought too highly of themselves. They basically didn't like Jewish people. Now, it wouldn't have been a problem in Judea, but even then there would be problems such as Jesus' lowly birth from Nazareth, as well as many other things, such as the fact that Jesus wasn't born to high-off people. There are many other unattractive things, such as Jesus associating with lower-class people, which again was decisively unattractive to people of that time. And the Romans, of course, would have regarded Christianity as horrible because it was believed that Christians were not offering worship to their gods, who were in fact holding up the societal structure. and Christianity was hurting that process, or at least that's what they believed. You see, there are a few ways that you can convince people of something, broadly speaking. One, you can appeal to their emotions, which again wouldn't have really worked because Jesus would have been prejudiced because of not only his status as a crucified victim, but also he would have been looked down upon for his birthplace and origin, and many other embarrassing details about him. There would have been a lot of that. So you wouldn't really get very far with appealing to emotions. Basically, you're fighting an uphill battle. And there were still plenty of churches, and there were still people who were rich even in the church. The Epistle of James makes that clear, that there were certain wealthy people coming into the church. The fact that Paul wrote a letter to the Corinthians because you kind of had to have a lot of money to live in Corinth. So it wasn't just lowly, lower class, poor people. And it wouldn't have won any converts if you just tell them to be content with their life. Because, no, poor people wanted to be higher up on the on the, shall we say, ladder of social status. They weren't wanting to be content with that. So, needless to say, Christianity was not off to a good start appealing to emotions. Number two, the other way you can convince somebody is with hard evidence. Sometimes people see hard evidence and they believe things that they didn't want to. The other thing is you could use a combination of the both. But here's the fact about human beings that we don't often like. Human beings are very much and very often thinking with their emotions. Very often their emotions will inform what they believe and that will be the lens through which they perceive evidences. Not having the emotional appeal, it wouldn't have done well to just rely on preaching and people telling things, especially since, again, the missionaries were first of all Jewish, and also, a lot of Christians were certainly, again, they didn't want to, not only would they not have wanted to go out there and just throw away their lives, but other people being convinced to do the same thing, well, the best explanation for that behavior is honestly the miracles in the book of Acts. In fact, in 2 Corinthians, Paul actually tells them, in a letter to themselves, by the way, Paul writes a letter saying, I did miracles among you guys, why don't you believe them? Now, it's one thing to tell a group of people that you did something once that they weren't there for. If I go up and tell somebody that you saw this and you know it, and they really didn't, I'm really shooting my credibility in the foot. And that's the last thing that Paul would do if such a thing didn't actually happen, because let's remember something. In 2 Corinthians, he's trying to get them to turn away from the new apostles who are deceiving them. Which means that the best explanation for why they believed is because of the miracles of the apostles, which could only have been done if Jesus really rose from the dead. So, not only would it have been practically impossible without the resurrection, which we're celebrating today, they would have given their lives up for nothing. But they didn't. There will be many more videos that I'm going to do about the historical reliability of the Gospels. But for now, this should be enough because I don't want to keep you from your families too long. And since you're probably tired at this point from a long day at Easter, again, I want you to rest up. I'll simply close with this. The number of Christians kept growing and growing throughout the centuries. And many people, many of them were inspired to come because of not only the amazing miracles that they saw, as is documented in the story of Christianity. They came because of miracles as well as people's love, and a perfect depiction of the resurrection. Jesus loves you. He died and rose again on the third day. And he did that because, in the first place, because of his love. It was the most miraculous event ever, but also the most loving act ever. So remember that this year, until we come back next year to celebrate it again. Bye, guys.
You give me peace that holds me when I'm broken. Sweet peace that passes understanding. When the whole wide world is crashing down, I fall to my knees and breathe in your peace.